Hello and welcome back to Everyday Conversations with your host, me, Dr. Knight. I'm so excited that you have joined us again on this journey talking about the 7 types of domestic violence. Today, we are talking about verbal abuse. And I want to remind you that some of the conversation that we may have may be a little explicit for some of our younger viewers. So I have been flagging these conversations on YouTube specifically with over 18 content, depending on what I actually share in the video. Like many of my other podcasts, yes, the topics are scripted. Yes, they're slated for what have you, but sometimes a thought will come into my head or a memory will come into my heart and I will expound on that. So if I find myself doing that and it's a little bit more explicit than usual, then I definitely want to mark those videos so that we can be sure that we're protecting the innocent and we're also making sure that it's still educational and a great experience for each of you that are on this journey with us. Listen, we're talking about verbal abuse and as another form of non physical abuse, meaning oftentimes the signs are very clear that, the words that are spoken are very hurtful. Someone is screaming or shouting at you, they're mocking or calling you hurtful names, using derogatory words about you. They could even sulk or refuse to be kind to you until you do something that they want. I believe that this is one of the hardest forms of domestic violence or abuse to overcome because of the lasting impact that it happens. I'm going to talk about some of the ways that this abuse shows up in relationships and then give you some tips and tricks, if you will, or some tools that may be able to help you overcome it. Let's think about the first part of what verbal means. These are spoken words. So, name calling, cruel nicknames based on someone's appearance, based on a personality trait, based on mannerisms. It could also show up in the form of criticism. And sometimes we'll say, oh, this is just feedback for you. But criticism is a little bit different. Feedback is intended to almost be a gift, right? And I use that language in other workshops that I do. Feedback is a gift. It's something that is to help you grow. It's something that is to help you build upon a skill that you already have. Perhaps you might have missed a mark a little bit from my perception, or maybe it landed a little bit wrong, but there's a conversation that can happen as it relates to feedback. Criticism is more about, could be more about things that you cannot change about your appearance, maybe about sexual performance. It's in the tone of voice. It's about your intelligence. It's about your career path, your interest, or even your choice of friends. So we want to be mindful that some of that conversation may not be helpful. It may be more about the abuser or the perpetrator, in this case, wanting something from you that you're not willing to give. So they will pick apart and nitpick these things about you, not intending to build you up, more so intending to tear you down such that you're walking on eggshells. Okay. So also condescending remarks about your or patronizing you. The victim may make you the butt end of the joke of social interactions or situations. This chips away at our self esteem and eventually can make many of us believe that we're incapable of doing anything. Therefore, we're frightened to do anything. I think I've used that language before, talking about other forms of abuse as it relates to verbal abuse. This is definitely a way just to caused me to be silent. Okay. This is very unhealthy for us. Manipulation, we talked a lot about that. The coercing or coercive or controlling behaviors that ultimately lead to isolation. Ultimately leading to isolation. Manipulation, isolation. If I can manipulate you into thinking something about yourself, when I was in that situation, I began to think about what this person thought about me, and then it made me not want to perform. It made me want to not be around other people because the emotional part of this is, do other people think this about me? No one's ever told me this. Maybe they do love me because they're actually telling me the truth. That's a tricky one. Blame. Blame the victim for any and everything that is negative about their life. That's an interesting twist. So it's not just enough to blame me. It's you're blaming me for parts of your life that maybe I wasn't even a part of. I think in my situation, what I was blamed for also goes into our next category of accusation, is that I was being blamed for being victimized in a previous relationship. Why didn't I know? Why didn't I scream? Why didn't I say something? Which I did do, but it was taking the information that I had given them, the space, and I thought I was safe in that love relationship. I thought that I was in an actual love relationship where I could tell the deepest parts about myself to this person, and they took that and twisted it and made it about them, but also blamed me. And then further, because I was sexually abused, I was molested. That they took that bit of information and then accused me of doing behaviors that caused that sick and evil person to do what they did to me. They blamed me for that. They blamed me for using my eyes to be seductive. They blamed me and accused me of even wanting to sleep with family members like my brother. That was hurtful. Like my uncle, who wouldn't hurt a fly, who has only shown me love and respect, who accused my father of doing things to me that had never been done based on what they believed about me because of their own insecurities. The crazy thing is, although none of those things were true from my other family members, nothing ever happened to me like that in my own home from my father, my dad, my uncles, or brothers, or anyone. I started to believe that there were behaviors that I was doing that contributed to why people treated me the way that they did. That is very, very hurtful. Accusations will cause and put a seed of doubt and sinister behavior, sinister thinking in our hearts and our minds when our abuser is accusing us of doing certain things. Discrimination is also a form of verbal abuse, meaning demeaning comments about my race, my ethnic background, my gender, my age, my sexuality, my religion. Now, religion I may be able to change, but the way that I was brought up to believe about religion and relationship with God, those are very close and dear things to me. But with discrimination, it's about things that I can't change about myself. My sex, right? Yes, I know people lived a life of, they feel like they are one person, a different person than the gender. They feel like they are a different gender than they were born. That wasn't my concern for myself. So to say all women do this or all Black women do that, or things that I could not change about myself, my appearance, my eyes, the shape of my body, those types of things are what we are talking about. And the interesting thing about this conversation about verbal abuse is that much of the research that I did, it also shows up as bullying, right? And not just bullying in a love relationship or in a partner relationship, using those terms loosely, but also in the workplace. So it caused me to think there's some more work that we may be able to do at a corporate level to really drive home that these behaviors, when a boss, a manager, a supervisor is talking down to their employees, what that might be doing to them, whether it is the first time that they've ever experienced some sort of verbal abuse, you're not good enough, why can't you get this report right? You're always whatever it is. It may be triggering really for people who have already experienced this type of abuse in their life. So, just a thought. Threats. Threats can include physical threats, such as causing harm or injuries, threats of spreading lies or rumors. I believe that was a huge reason for me because of the things that I shared so freely about my life. I didn't want people to know certain things, but I felt that my partner, my husband, should know these things, and so that there were no boundaries or no barriers in our relationship. So, but threats to release some of that information um, was really harmful. Really, really harmful. Threats about hurting other people that I care about, such as my kids or my mom at that time. Bringing information to the church where my brother's my pastor, my first lady is my sister-in-law. There were certain things that they knew about me because they grew up with me, right? They saw me growing up, but the nitty-gritty details that I shared with someone that I trusted, this caused me to stay closer. Was that saying like, keep your enemies close. Once I figured out that I was married to an enemy, I was like, ooh, I don't know if I should ever leave, because if I leave, there's the mental and emotional piece, right? If I leave, then. And a lot of times we stay in situations longer than we need to because of this type of behavior. And the power of words, we're going to talk about it. Gaslighting involves disregarding or discounting. We've talked about this in other types and other forms of abuse, contradicting comments and feelings, often changing what they want from day to day. You're the most beautiful person in the world too. I can't stand you. I hate you. You're terrible. You're this, you're that, because that person is not getting their way. They're in their center of their world, and this is what they want. They want to intimidate me to make me do what they want me to do. In terms, my self-esteem is plummeting, all-time low, and I'm scared to leave. I'm fearful that if I leave, then all of these other things, all of these other unintended consequences that come along with that may be worse than actually leaving. There's an old adage that says, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt or harm me, right? We've heard that as kids. It's just words. That doesn't mean anything. And so we tend to dismiss our own feelings, our own thoughts, and sweep these things under the carpet. I can understand what the intention of this message is, but in essence, it's saying that, there's no physicality, there's no outcome, there's no physical showing of words, that stones, if you get hit with the stone, they used to stone people in the Bible days, right? You do something wrong, you commit adultery, boom, you're stoned, right? So sticks and stones can actually bruise our bodies. But the older that I got in understanding these words, and really understanding that there was a fallacy around that second part, that words will never hurt or harm me, the latter part of that is absolutely inaccurate. Words have power. And there's even a scripture that says that the power of life and death is in our tongue. So whatever we speak, whether we're speaking life, whether we're speaking positive things, whether we're speaking negative things, that is what will actually manifest. So when someone is speaking to us and we're embracing their words as truth, even though it may not be true, even though it may be foul and wrong, those words still land on us and have a lasting impact, to the brokenness and to the bruising of our mental, emotional, and psychological beings, right? That is ultimately what becomes the expression of our physical health and well-being. When I was being verbally abused, when I was in a verbally abusive relationship, my countenance, I was sad. My head was often hung low. I didn't have that same joy, that same peace, that same excitement about life. And that's what was manifesting on the outside because of what was going on the inside. So there is absolutely a physical aspect of verbal abuse. Sometimes I wouldn't eat. And I'm going to give you an example later on about the weight loss journey that I went on, based on, not solely based on, but definitely magnified by the verbal abuse that I received around my gaining weight. Okay. Verbal abuse for me was by far the hardest form of abuse for me to overcome. Because, like emotional abuse, the moment I began to think that I had overcome the words from my offender, almost like without warning, instantly, it was those same words, those very words, that I began reciting with unconsciously, reciting about what I thought I could or couldn't do, repeating those words when I felt I had failed or almost succeeded. There's a song by Brandy that says "almost doesn't count." I'm going to talk about that in the next section, and I'm in our next class. But I almost succeeded, therefore it didn't count. Those words were still, those dreadful words were the main thing, the first thing that popped into my head as truth. I had to learn that those negative words, those phrases, those conversations, that was that person's perception. That didn't make it true. I was choosing to believe that it was true because of all the heaviness and all the weight that had already been put on me, that I allowed in my life. But I had a choice to believe whatever I wanted. And that if my brain had the power to disprove everything that they were saying by realizing that if I was successful one time, that there was proof that I had what it took to do it again. So I had to create and redefine success for myself. That's when I really learned the power of affirmation. And this is a takeaway I want you to walk away with and think about. What are you saying to yourself? And if it's not true, if you don't believe that is true, if you have adopted the words of someone else in your life as your truth, what do you want to say about you? And what is the truth about you? Okay. I remember sitting in this workshop where the keynote speaker asked everyone to identify one limiting belief, meaning one belief, one thing that I believed about myself that may or may not was true, but that I believed to be true. Belief is powerful, and it is as powerful as words, and we will act out whatever we believe is true. Remember, we cannot act differently than what we believe. So at that time, my greatest challenge that I wrote down on that paper was about overcoming my battle with gaining weight. Well, I believed that I was always be that fat pig, that fat pig that someone said that I thought I loved, that I thought loved me, said that I would be. Boom, there's my choice. I can believe in this moment that I will always be a fat pig, or I could believe that I had the power to change by changing what I thought about myself and by changing the words that were coming out of my mouth. Because whatever was coming out of my mouth is how I was going to behave. Okay. Here's the thing. I had been out of that relationship for more than 5 years. For more than 5 years, and those words were still haunting me. So even though I was no longer in that relationship where I was hearing the terrible things about what one person out of all the billions of the people in this world, I chose to believe the one person that had something negative to say about me, not based on really me, but based on what they thought about themselves. Right? I chose to believe that the 1 in 100 people in my family at that time, I chose to dismiss the 100 people in my family and what they thought about me, what I heard in my graduation, what I heard about my life, what I heard about my genes. My mom has good genes, y'all. I know I talk about my dad having the fat gene, but he too had good genes because he was able to overcome diabetes and some other things before he passed. So we all had the power. And instead of me choosing to believe the words of 15 people now in my new family, my new blended family with my husband and my children, my new husband, my great husband, my protector, my ride or die, I call him my I finally got it right. I finally got the thug with the job. Y'all heard me talk about my Navy SEAL husband. I finally gotten it right. But I was choosing to believe not those words that they were saying about me, but the words that someone who couldn't, who was incapable of loving me, was saying about me. Now, I ain't gonna lie. In that workshop, I had a couple tears and I was trying to hide it because I was like, I'm not a punk. I got this. But I realized that I had to take my complete power back. It wasn't enough to just recognize that, yes, this person said this to me. Yes, I was hurt. Yes, it's 5 years later. Shell, get over yourself, get it together. But that's how deeply rooted some of this stuff can be when we're talking about overcoming the words that people have said to us, the words that make me tremble and had fear about doing anything, the words that I believed for so long, even a short period of time. Do you know there are statistics that says that, like, creating a habit, right? They tell people in AA and NA, or all of the different addiction processes, that it takes about 30 days to create a habit, right? But sometimes once you create that habit and you've been practicing it for 30, for 60, for 90, for 360 days, that becomes a part of our fiber. That becomes a part of our being. And sometimes, even though we may recognize that this is what is going on, sometimes I found for me that it takes as long as I was in that loop, once I recognize it, to come out of that loop. So this is a journey. This is not a conversation about you wake up one day, you have this epiphany, and poof, it's gone. There are stories like that. Like when I decided I wasn't going to smoke anymore, I made the decision. I was like, I'm not smoking anymore. I had something else that was bigger, that was greater, that was causing me to recognize that I didn't need to smoke anymore. That was an old behavior that was no longer serving me. And just like that, I was able to quit cold turkey and did not go back. Right. But these things that we're talking about in this series sometimes can take a lot of time to unravel. So even though I wasn't in that situation, even though I wasn't hearing that on a daily basis, the fact is that I was missing out on believing the truth about myself. I was missing out on the fact that I was believing a lie and that I was choosing to live out that lie until I made another choice. And that new choice was to have a more affirming belief. I was no longer in that toxic relationship, though that was proof point number one that I could be successful. And not just successful at getting out of a toxic relationship, but getting out of a toxic relationship with myself. Right. So I had many proof points that I could choose from to now create a more affirming belief. I was no longer going to give credence to those words. I was no longer going to give them my power, my time, my thoughts, my peace, my joy, my present, or my future. And like I said, yes, it took time, but the first thing was recognizing what I needed to do more than anything was to get disciplined about what I was thinking about. And not only what I was thinking about, but what I was saying to myself. Discipline to stay the course that I set for myself. I started looking into my diet. I started creating boundaries for drinking soda because that was my vice, and increasing my water intake. I started looking at my portion controls. Had I done this before? Yep. Yep. And I felt like a failure because when I think back, and I can't let myself think back too much, if I would have continued the journey in 2000, when was my daughter born? 2014 to now, I could have already been my brick house body. I could have already done that, but there was a necessary process. Okay, so I'm making light of this just in a little bit, but it took time. I started looking at and celebrating when I lost the 2 pounds. Y'all, I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed that I didn't even tell my new loving husband and my kids that have been supporting me from day one how much I weighed. And then I only told them how much I wanted to lose. And they were like, Mom, you're okay. And I'm like, no, y'all just don't know. I was embarrassed. So I celebrated the 2 pound loss. And the next thing I knew, maybe a month later, I was down 10 pounds. Then I started increasing my walking and exercising. And then I started asking the family to join along with me. We would put the baby in the stroller and we would be walking. And then soon she got old enough to walk and she was able to walk with us or ride her bike. And I asked my oldest son at home at the time, I said, son, you're in great physical shape. I mean, all-star football player. Can you help me work out? I started asking my son, who's a chef, can you help me create, menus and creative meals? We started changing everything. So as I was changing, I was inviting my accountability system to come along this journey with me. Okay. Before I knew it, I had lost 25 pounds. Then after a year, I had lost 40 pounds. I was motivated. I was feeling inspired. I felt like Oprah on that commercial when I first started. She said, I love bread. And I was like, Oprah, I do too. And so I was able to modify behaviors, eat a little bread when I felt like I wanted to. I never deprived myself of anything, but I had to understand that I had the power and that those words that I was hearing, I'll never lose weight, all your family's overweight, obese, this, that, and the other, all of these health things. And then I got to the point where I lost 50 pounds, y'all. And now I'm at the point where I'm about 5 pounds away from my original goal closer than ever. And now the practices that I've put into place, including overcoming this mind and taking a hold of my tongue and saying only those things that are true and not reciting those things from my past that hurt me deeply and actually put me into a state of depression. I'm almost there and I feel better than ever. I'll just put it into perspective. I went from a size 20 and kept buying clothes. I was like 18. I was like, oh, I'm just accepting I'm being a big girl. I'm gonna be that fat pig. I'm gonna be a big bag. Whatever. That's my story. Your story might be different of what someone told you. I'm telling you me. To the point now where I'm at an 8'10". I lost 10 clothing sizes by changing my mind, changing yes, definitely changing my behaviors, but changing the way I think about me. I accepted that I did not have to believe the truth that someone else's words were saying about me. I had to learn to change what I was saying to myself. So now, do thoughts of failure or lack of success still creep in? Yes. From time to time, they do. But I don't have to stay there. I don't have to wallow in that. I can go, that's not true. I can begin to access and speak the truth I want to manifest. And you can do it too. I want you to practice speaking life into yourself and believe that you are worth the discipline it takes to turn every negative word into the positive force that you need to push yourself and thrive like never before. And I want to remind you, as always, to give yourself the same grace, the same love that you give to others. We are here for you. If you want to talk more about speaking life and what it means to create an affirmation, of course, you can reach out to me. You can share this video. Please comment, make those comments. I'm looking at those comments. I'm responding to those comments and making sure that we are providing the best resources as possible for you to live your best life after devastation. Until next time, when we come back together on this platform, we'll be talking about physical abuse. And I'll probably have to mark that one for sure because there is some graphic details that I do want to share about those experiences that I've heard and those things that I've witnessed, those things that I have experienced. So until then, give yourself the same grace, the same love that you give to others. Until next time.